All right, so the session here is about best practices for dashboard performance. And I want to make sure that the time that you've dedicated to this session is helpful for you, and you can take away some of the knowledge that I'm here to kind of just impart. I've been with Tableau for about 5 years. I've been in data and analytics industry for about 20 years. And some of the things that I'm going to show you kind of come from my principles that I know from the past and how they apply for Tableau. So in terms of making this session helpful, I thought agenda would be helpful. So who's here? Obviously, all of you are here. I'm here. The reason I put that there is this session is marked for advanced audience, so I'm not going to go through some of the basics. Then we will talk maybe for about 10 minutes around my thoughts on why performance matters. So allow me to just kind of talk about that, and then we will actually get into real tips and real action, things where I can actually demonstrate the impact of things when you don't do things right. And for those of you who will stick till the very end, I have a takeaway visual that can help you as you continue to build and design dashboards. So let's get started. Why does performance matter? Maybe let's go back about 20 years. If you look at a picture here, I think 20 years ago, you will say that's very geeky, nerdy. The word data actually did not associate with things other than geeky or nerdy. Fast forward to today, where you hear data is the new oil, data is the new currency, data is power. To me, data is the new cool. So I'm proud to be called a data geek or a data nerd. Anybody else here with me? Yeah? Thank you. So it's not just about the data. In my opinion, it's about the stories that the data tells us. It's about how we bring out the stories from the data, right? And that could be visualizing conflict. That could be showing sports statistics. That essentially just could be showing the history of a music legend. Now, getting to why it matters, let's picture something. I'm going to paint a scene here for you. We've had a long, hard day at work. You're going back home, let's say in a train, and listening to music, which a lot of us do. I do. And then you hear this song, the song that you can really immerse yourself into, to the point that you feel like your tiredness is just melting away. It's fading away. And then your train goes into a tunnel, and your connection is buffering, and you lose that engagement with the music. Think about the impact that you had where performance became an inhibitor to engagement. So in my opinion, any data story that we're building, that we're putting out there, should be truthful, purposeful, and engaging. And the meat of the session here is about how do we make sure that our story that we are telling from the data that we have is going to be engaging. Principle number 1, in my opinion, one size does not fit all. So let's take an example. On the left, you actually see something like an executive dashboard. A lot of us have heard that term. What this is showing is summary of my data, summary of the state of the business. And on the right, we have something that is built for, let's say, a power user, an analyst, to be able to do their ad hoc analysis, where they have some levers they can pull and push and try to find that unknown, try to find that next $1 million idea in their business. Now, as you build this, the principles that we will follow for the rest of the session apply to both. Recently, I was at a training where there was this phrase that was being repeated over and over again, which was, awareness can be self-correcting. So I want to actually make you aware of a lot of the principles that you impart and how we can correct them so that our dashboards that we build really have the engagement that we're looking for. Principle number 2, in my opinion, might be actually looking at the slide and say, what does that mean, designer and builder? To me, actually, this is a change that's happened over the last 5 or 10 years. In the past, you had somebody else designing and somebody else building. You had a dashboard in mind for which somebody was working to make sure that a slice of a data was perfectly curated for the questions that the dashboard was going to address. So they were designing it for you, and then somebody else goes ahead and builds it. In today's world, successful data-driven organizations are not measured by their ability to answer the same question repeatedly, right? They're measured by their ability to use data to be able to ask the question that hasn't been contemplated yet. So what that means from a design and building perspective is that all of you who are building dashboards, just consider yourself as the architect and the engineer, right? You're the ones who get to do the fun stuff on a whiteboard and create this, wonderful vision of a dashboard, but you're also the one who actually have to bring that vision to life. Why this is important is because there are certain principles that maybe 5, 10 years ago you didn't care about, but maybe you should care about now because your dashboards are not answering one question, they're answering many questions. So now that you've given me the time to kind of just say my thoughts, I know a lot of you are here to see, I want to see the tips, I want to see the tricks. What can I really do? We're going to go into that. Tool number 1. I am actually surprised a lot of people who've been using Tableau for a while actually don't know this. So I'm just going to let you all know. For those of you who do know this, or advanced users, you might be like, okay, I know what this is. Performance recording. This is an item within your help menu in Tableau Desktop that measures every single interaction, how long the query took, how long the sorting of the data took, how long did the computing of the layout took. It could be a sub-second, it could be 5 seconds. This is tool number 1, because if you can't measure something, you cannot improve that, right? So let's start measuring. When somebody says it's slow, well, how slow? Oh, it's just slow. How slow? 5 seconds, 10 seconds? And we are going to make incremental improvements to make it go from 10 seconds to 5 seconds, from 5 seconds to a sub-second, because we're looking for people to have that engagement with data. So at this point, we're actually going to go ahead and switch into a live demo where we have a dashboard. If you can switch for me, please. Thank you. So let's go ahead and, I think I'm going to have to stand here, show you how to enable that performance recording. So for me, it's right here. So when I click on this, what happens? Nothing on the dashboard. And a lot of times people go like, well, I was expecting to see some kind of a counter. I know that the performance recording is running because the menu item changed from start to stop. That's all you need to know. So it's now running. It's going to capture every single click that we are going to take or be doing on this dashboard from here on. So we've started the performance recording. I'm going to go ahead and launch this dashboard. Needs my password to a database. Okay, this is going to take a while. So I can tell you another story. So I go to, I didn't expect that to be empty. So hold on for that story. I'm going to do some active troubleshooting. Okay, I'm being put on the spot here. We'll figure it out. There we go. All right, let it run. So I think this will take a while, so I can tell you a little story. So here's the story. I was in Tableau Professional Services, and there was a lot of times I used to go do trainings and just kind of give tips on performance improvement, a lot of other things. At the end of our 2-day training, we had a chunk of time that I said, what do we want to do here? And one of the participants, my customer, let's call her Kate, she said, Lavkesh, we have this dashboard where everything is just super slow. How slow? Everything takes a minute for it to load. Really? Can you help us improve it? Sure. So I do have a trained eye. I started looking at certain things. And as I started looking at certain things, I found something. And I found this thing where they were using what's called custom SQL in Tableau. So she was using custom SQL, and every interaction was taking a minute. And I said, would it be OK, Kate, if we spend about 15 minutes trying to rewrite this a little bit differently? She said, yes, absolutely. So we spent about 15 minutes in a stage like this. I don't think there were that many people, but we actually made a few changes to the data model. And once we made the changes, that I think it took about 15 minutes, the dashboard was snappy. It was literally sub-second. She looked at it. She turned around to somebody else who creates a lot of dashboards, and she goes, hey, John. John looked at her, and she goes, I wonder if we've been doing this wrong all along. And it was very, very impactful for me. Why? Because I actually realized that day that the one small little tip that I thought was just such a small little thing for me actually made a huge impact for them, for everybody at that company. So what I want to do is actually I want to show you those small little things when added together make actually a big difference. So you saw this extremely slow dashboard. I think it took about 2 minutes for it to completely load. We're actually going to go ahead and start doing some of those things. Fingers crossed. This is connecting to a database. We're doing a live demo, so if you start seeing me sweat, I think things aren't going wrong, right. So let's get into it. We'll start off with a custom SQL example. So what do we have here? We are looking at sum of sales by month of order date and by product subcategory. That's basically what it is. You don't really, in the back, if you can't really read, that's OK. I'll actually spell it out for you. Just to make sure that I'm not hitting the cache, every single time I go to a sheet, I'm going to go ahead and hit refresh, which is F5, just to see how long this takes, 5, 6 seconds. OK, let's see what's really going on. So this is a custom SQL example. I'm going to go ahead and see what that SQL is. Let's expand that as much as I can. So I look at this. For those of you who are familiar with SQL, might actually find something interesting really quickly, which is this portion right here. This is nothing but aggregation of data that exists in the database. I want to see all the dimensions, the product, subcategory, category, region, country, state, zip, all of that. And then at that lowest level, I want to aggregate my sales, my profit, the total discount I've given, so on and so forth. I am actually joining 2 tables, and I'm filtering out a few things. Wherever I see the flag is null, division flag is null, so certain things where the data that I don't care about, I'm just filtering that out. Now, why is this important? Because in a lot of cases, when you're actually migrating from your traditional analytics to modern BI, a lot of people will say, if you try to create a report like this, I'm going to give you the SQL that will create that report. Go ahead and plug it into Tableau, and then off you go. It's a very common scenario where some data stewards or DBAs are just handing SQL to people, and they're plugging it in. Now, here's what happens in Tableau. If you use a custom SQL, every single interaction that we are going to do, when we want to aggregate all of this by country, when we want to aggregate all of this by region, and those are different visuals, this SQL becomes part of a bigger SQL. So this has to run, and then we run something on top of it. And that really does not help. So we don't actually need this. So just like a good chef on show, I have a pre-baked pie. So my pre-baked pie, let's see, looks like this. Let's see how long it takes. Oh, that was snappy. F5 again, make sure it is really snappy. Yeah, it is. One more time. It's working great. So how did we make that change? Let's go ahead and go to that data source. I said 2 tables. Those are the 2 tables. They were joined with a left join. That's the join right there. And then we added some filters. So each of those dimensions where I was excluding null as part of that SQL itself, I'm excluding null here. This is exactly the same data that we were looking at in the previous one. But when I go here, it's snappy. So we're running a performance recording, but I've also done a performance recording prior to this. look at the difference over here. This may not be exactly what we saw, maybe a few sub-seconds here or there. You might say 4 or 5 seconds. Look at the impact. That's what, if my math is good, 8 to 9 times. One small thing that matters much in the end. That's one example. We're going to keep doing more of these. We're going to go to another one. We are looking at sales again by month and by manager ID. Okay, F5 one more time. Let's just see what happens. Is it running? Yep, it's running. Computing view layout. Do you see what happened here? Notice sorting data. For those of you who didn't catch it, for a couple of seconds it stayed there and it's just sorting data. This is another thing that will get captured in our performance recording. When I see anything that's taking sorting data for a few seconds, I know I have to address it. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and address it. Let's see what we did here. This is simple enough. 2 dimensions, sum of sales. Let's see what the sort really is on this one. So I'm sorting both the month and the manager ID by another dimension, long description, maybe because I want to see how many different distinct products are there. If I simply take that sort away, and I'm going to hit F5, it's back. Going to take the F5, and it's back. So this is, again, the same data, just represented a little differently. Some of you skeptics out there, I'm a natural skeptic myself, sorry about that. Some might say, well, that's not exactly the same data. It is represented differently. So again, I'm not saying you go ahead and get rid of all the sorts. Wherever it makes sense, you keep it. But sorting can have an impact, because what is sorting really, right? Sorting is, I have to order everything. So the longer the list that I have to sort, the more time it will take. So for that example, we're sorting this by another measure or a dimension will take longer. Sometimes it will add half a second. Sometimes it will add a few seconds. So let's see the impact of that. When I sorted it by that default metric, in my case, half a second. When I sort this by another metric, especially the metric that has a lot of different values, count distinct of long description of a product, 6 seconds. Again, that's what, 11 or 12 times? Small things that matter much that we need to be just aware of. Now, I'm going to add one other thing here. It's very possible that there are people who are actually creating something in a dashboard. And as they create, they leave the sort in there, they leave the filter in there, they leave the context filter in there. Some of these things will be very helpful that before you publish the dashboard that you know others have to use, it was not about the ad hoc analysis, it is about the executive dashboard for people, then go ahead and look at the list of things that you should just be aware about and take out when you don't need them. I have that list for you right here. So in my opinion, and we're going to go to a little bit of a detail of this, in my opinion, these are all the things that I know matter. Your top right is, in my opinion, the low-hanging fruit. These are things that I know are going to have a huge impact, and these are things that I believe have a higher likelihood of adoption. What do I mean? Things that are within your control as a designer or a builder of a dashboard. I can change how much data I want to show. I can change how many number of marks I want to show, the number of sheets, custom SQL, sorting. And as you go from top right to bottom left, don't worry about taking a picture, because this is your takeaway. I will make possible that you have access to this if you stay till the very end and do an evaluation. Good or bad, doesn't matter. So as you go from top right to bottom left, those are things where you can make a difference, absolutely, but the impact might be less, and it will take you longer. So these different buckets are things you should look at first, top right. Then in the middle are what I call laborious fixes that provide incremental improvement. They will take time, but sometimes you have to put in that time. And as you go to the bottom left, when you try to squeeze every second, every sub-second, they will take time and they will give you some improvement. Some of you might debate where I place different tips on this scatter plot, and that's okay. This is just my opinion. I'm looking to actually improve this upon as well, so you guys can give me some tips. Now on the top left, these things right here, huge impact, but outside the control of at least who I believe are designers or builders of the dashboard. Database type, hardware, server load. These are things that others should look at, but maybe you can't control. Tableau extract sits on the cusp because there are times you can decide what's an extract, but please don't use Tableau extracts or with Hyper as a silver bullet for performance. It's going to give you better performance, I guarantee that, but please don't use that as a silver bullet. And this bottom left are things that maybe are just intermittent. If database load is too high, you will see an impact, but your DBAs are probably on top of that, so they'll work on it. Let's go to the next one, which is, oh, sorry about that. Come out of presentation mode. And we're going to go to tabular data. This is a lot of people's favorite and a lot of people's pet peeve. Why do we have to show so much data when we can find the hidden insight a different way? This is going to take a few seconds. Believe this is maybe a million rows or whatnot. So what is really going on over here is just a lot of data that we're trying to put on a screen. So the computing layout will take a while. In my opinion, yes, there's a need sometimes for you to dump data tables out. But let's not use Tableau as an intermediate to just do data dumps. Tableau is not meant to be a data dumping tool. In a lot of cases, at least when I was in professional services, talking to my customers, they said, we want to do analysis on this data. What kind of analysis, I would ask. They'll say, well, I want to find something interesting. What are you looking to do? Those questions over and over again told me a couple of things. One, that sometimes, or a lot of times, they did not really need that much data to be displayed because you can't really scan it. And you've heard this message from Tableau many times. The second thing was a lot of times they just wanted to see the top of something. I want to see my top orders, my top customers, my top products. So let's see if I just make that one change and go to the same view, which is, what is this really? Order ID by class, flag, country, state, city, ship mode. And we're going to go to top 100 rows. I'm showing the same level of detail, less data. Let's make sure this is not cached. Is it back? It's back. Huge impact. How do we do that? Let's show you how to do that as well. I'm going to go ahead and open this filter for order ID. Come on. There we go. All I'm doing is I'm saying, show me the top 100 by sales. Let's drive this point home. Same data, 10,000 rows. F5 again. Is it back? Maybe not yet. 10,000 rows. So when you're looking at 10,000 rows, that's a lot of data for people to actually just be able to consume. If they're looking for some analysis, are they really going to go through a million rows? So think about 10,000 rows did not take that long of a time. Let's see the impact of this. Showing all marks was about 33 seconds the last time I ran the performance recording. I think it took about the same time this time. Showing top 100 was 1.5 seconds, and showing top 10,000, 5 seconds. So think about the impact. Again, small little things that are going to matter much in the long run. You know where I'm going with this. I'm going to show you about 3 or 4 more tips and tricks, and we'll look at the dashboard when all of those tips are added together. What does that really mean for us? Let's go and look at filter conditions. This is actually, I think, an interesting one. I won't use the word favorite, but I see filters being used very differently at different places, depending on the person who had the access to that first Tableau or data that they created first Tableau dashboard, and then their knowledge just disseminated within the organization, so everybody started doing what they were doing. Some of that was great, some of that was not. So if you look at this, I'm going to go ahead and edit the filter and show you that I am looking at that similar data that we looked at before. I just don't care about the nulls here. So I have, let's see if I can zoom. There we go. I have 36 out of the 37 potential values selected in here. That's one example. Let's look at this one, location flag. How many values do I have in that location flag? I have 1,297 values, and all I'm doing is excluding null. If I make that one change for this and go to the one that we've created to exclude the nulls, that's basically all the change between these two. That was pretty snappy. We're going to just run that again. So exclude nulls. We have all the same dimensions, so it's not that we're getting rid of a dimension here. Hit F5, is it back? And it's back. So far we looked at avoiding, in my opinion, maybe just reducing completely custom SQL dependence, because custom SQL adds another problem. Every time there's a change to the data model, a new column comes into your underlying table, you have to adjust the custom SQL, because custom SQL did not know that there's a new table. When you use the data model in Tableau, where you're just dragging and dropping tables, the new columns just appear like magic, right? Because we do a quick little metadata check, which is to say, does this table exist? Does it still have all the old columns that I needed? Does it have any new columns that somebody might use? So all of those good things, you just lost. We also looked at how much data we want to show. We talked about sorting, and we talked about filter conditions. Count distinct is another interesting one. Count distinct actually could be good or bad in terms of the impact on performance. So what is count distinct? We looked at, I want to see the list of all the different companies of attendees that are here, right? So 17,000 people, but how many companies do they represent? So I might do a count distinct on company. Well, how does count distinct really works? So let's make you aware. Count distinct cannot be very random. Count distinct requires the concept of sorting behind the scenes. So as I'm picking up random things, customer A, company A, and the next item I see is customer D from company D, I'm actually starting to stack these. A goes here, D goes here, the next one I get C goes here, F goes here, and every single item that's coming, I'm sorting this, and then after I've done the sort, I'm counting how many instances of people are within each company. Count distinct typically is a very expensive operation, to the point that there are algorithms that some companies have developed. One of them, I think, is Google. It's called hyper log log plus plus. The algorithm had to be called hyper log log plus plus. Because what they're doing is they're trying to come up with ways to approximate count distinct to very, very close real value, but it's not close. But those are much faster algorithms. So it is really a very big problem. So when you use count distinct, I'm not, again, saying get rid of count distinct. I use it a lot, and I love using count distincts. But again, just be aware what impact it can have. In this particular example, I think when I measured this, the impact was very little. So what is the difference between these two? We are looking at just all the sales by order ID, sales, cost, discount, profit, 4 measures. And the one that was not tuned also had the count distinct of orders. It had that extra measure in there, right? And that's right here. So for each order, I'm counting how many orders are there. Well, duh, the answer is 1 every single time. But I'm just trying to make a point. What if there were order line items, right? How many line items per order I want to find out? This order had 5 items, 3 items, and I'm trying to do a count distinct on it. That can have an impact on the performance. Let's quantify that and see what that is. Very little. In this particular case, very little. And visually also, we didn't see much of a difference. So let's make sure. I'm going to do F5 again. Here's the back. There we go. 4 or 5 seconds, I guess. And let's do this one also. So in this one, I could not really, at least with my data set, I didn't come up with an example where I could show you the drastic difference. But I thought this is well worth mentioning because I've seen huge performance gains by just removing count distinct or finding another way to do it. Again, please don't take any of these tips and tricks that I'm saying and say, Lovekesh told us no count distinct, no sorting, no custom SQL, can't do this, can't do that, let's just get rid of everything, and we lose all that functionality. At no point would I suggest that we implement these tips and tricks and then take away functionality. But just be aware the impact that it can have, right? A few more for us. Okay, data model. This one actually is interesting. It's something that I've seen at a lot of customers where, similar to custom SQL, somebody says, I will tell you what the data model is. Here's the little ERD, for those of you know what ERD is. It's just a diagrammatic representation of tables with the joins. And you say, go ahead and build this data model. 1, 2, 3, 5 different tables. And you say, yeah, I want to build it all. And then maybe I will use some of it, I will not use some of it. So what are we looking at in here? I want to see a measure by each country. And let's do F5 just to see how many seconds does this one take. 3 or 4 seconds. Let's see behind the scene what this data model is. Okay, looking at sales data, tied it with location data, and some generic order dimension, some order dimension that I have. Well, in this particular case, I'm actually not using anything from the order dimension. Again, I ran the performance recording. I saw what's really going on. I look for those tuning opportunities, and I say, well, what happens if we just get rid of this table altogether? So again, let me take out my pre-baked pie and go to the next one. Same thing, right? By region, by country, summer sales. Gonna hit F5. And is it back? Yep, that's back. So what did I do? And this one, literally nothing but take that table away. This one is a little bit, something that I may or may not implement, in the sense that I don't want to create data models that are very report specific, right? I don't want to create a data model just for one dashboard, another data model just for another dashboard. I do want to create a all-encompassing data model that has many tables. So in situations where you believe that a lot more questions will keep coming from the additional tables, keep that in there, but again, awareness can be self-correcting. So what does that really mean? What's the difference of this? Let's look at the data model impact. So when we had 2 tables, the query actually ran in less than a second, and when we had an extra table, but we weren't really using it, it was about 3 to 4 seconds. So what I've done so far is, let me see if I can open this up over here. I've shown you some of the ones that have been highlighted over here. We talked about tabular data, filter condition, sorting, custom SQL data model, and count distinct. But there's some additional ones that we can implement on a dashboard. So let's go through 2 or 3 of those. And when we put all of this on a dashboard, so we're about to now open the dashboard that has all of those steps in there and some additional ones. Time for another story? Maybe, maybe not. This dashboard with very similar functionality, and I'll tell you what I took away so you don't feel like this is not apples to apples comparison, with very few changes, is giving me everything that I need. That took 2 minutes, I think. This one was back in 7 seconds. I'm going to click it again because I'm proud of it. Let's see, 6, 7 seconds. It's done. Let's go ahead and interact with this one. Let's see what happens if I just do it for a region. How long does that take? It's pretty cool. I'm gonna get rid of that filter. Maybe I slice it by a year. How long does that take? That's back. I'm gonna click on a product. That's back. I'm gonna click on this May and dairy combination, and I have the detailed data as well. This is the kind of engagement that I think everybody has been promised, right? When they first saw Tableau, they said, that's amazing. But by the time some of the execs get the dashboard, they say, well, the performance sucks. What's wrong? It's because small little things as we were designing and building, and I think some of this has been caused because of this concept of self-service analytics. People are now able to do things that we weren't able to do before. But as you go through the journey of designing and building something, if it is for wider audience, wider consumption, please take a few minutes before you publish it just to see have you implemented the things that you should implement. Again, not everything that Lovekesh said, but some of the things that make sense. Please put in that time, because this is the difference between a dashboard just being published and nobody ever using it versus finding that next $1 million idea within the company. What did I take away and what else did I implement in this dashboard? So let's actually go to that cache dashboard. I'm not going to refresh that one because I don't have more stories to tell. This is the one that took 2 minutes. The middle section of the filters has been taken away. This is month, ship mode, product subcategory, and country. What did I do here? Simply something that I think most of you advanced people do know. Visual filters, guided navigation. So I have product as a filter available. I have month as a filter available. I have the subcategory. Okay, I should make sure that I'm clicking or unclicking all of those. So I'm going to slow it down so that people are not confused by my mouse clicks. Ship mode, right here. I have that available as a filter condition. So when I click on air, everything should update only for air. Product subcategory. So when I click on grain, every single thing in the dashboard should update just for grain. Takes a few seconds and get me that detailed data. Same thing that I have all of that functionality that I had in the dashboard, just presented a little bit differently. Why does it matter? It's because every single filter that you add to the top requires another query in some cases. So let's talk about that as well. If you have a filter that looks like this, that has the list of values that are available in the data, which is also known as an enumerated filter. The filter values have been shown to you so you can select from them, right? This requires another query, and that can add some more time to it. Whereas if I put it into the view itself, that doesn't require another query. The second thing that we've done here is, let's go back to this one, and hopefully this doesn't just slow us down again, is that I had implemented this tip of only relevant values in every one of these filters. So essentially what that means is every time I change the region, I want to see only the subcategories that have been sold in that region. Sometimes that makes sense, but you know what? If I have X number of subcategories, it kind of doesn't matter, because if I'm looking for a specific subcategory, it's fine, I'll choose from it, or I could type it. So I've taken that away. That reduces the burden because we don't have the additional queries for the extra filters. On top of that, oh, you get to see the impact. All right, we'll go there in a minute. So the filter conditions with the cascading filters, with the kind of filters that you're implementing, can also have a huge impact. So let's use the principles of visual filters and guided navigation, because if people want to see what's really going on and they say, I wanted to do more analysis, instead of giving them a 1,000,000 row data set, what are they actually looking for? in more than one time or one occasion I've seen, they're looking for something like this. I want to see the density map. I want to see which product subcategories in which months are really selling high. And I want to see the additional details of it. Well, that was not too hard for us, right? So we have, how many rows here? 6,230 rows. That's a lot of data. So if you want to go another level, sure, go at it. But it's only the selected slice when people are looking for those hidden insights. So we implemented visual filters in addition to removing cascading filters. We also took away this particular table. So for those of you who don't know how to do this, this is just simply a dashboard action, right? So for each one of these dashboards, where I'm saying when I select anything in one sheet, all the other sheets should filter down. I have decided one sheet shouldn't, which is the tabular data. The tabular data, the one at the very bottom, is only getting activated when somebody selects this one right here, any cell within here. The tabular data is the only one that gets filtered for that selected subsegment and the month. Otherwise, when somebody unclicks, this option called exclude values, it says clearing the selection will exclude the values. I find this incredibly helpful, especially when you're putting tabular data on a dashboard. Use this option so that the impact is simply when I select, I get the subsegment of the data. When I clear the filter, it excludes all the values. We basically removed a very expensive query from the entire operation of loading this dashboard. Huge impact, right? I think there's one additional thing that we implemented in here. Oh, that's right. One additional thing that I did was a little bit on the back end, which will only help when I use this filter. So on the back end, a lot of you might have heard the word indexing. Indexing is just simply a technique in databases that just help performance. Let's just keep it at that. So this particular column, which is the year, has already been indexed, whereas the other slower dashboard was given the same functionality through a date range. I want to go from any month, any year to any month, any year. And this filtering selection also makes a big difference. I actually didn't even show you the slow one in here. So we went through 6 different things on our individual sheets, and then we go through 3 or 4 additional tips, and I showed you how to make that change. Now, this is the impact of that. The orange ones are the ones that were not tuned. The blue ones are the ones that were tuned. So I took it upon myself to do a performance recording and just do a few different clicks like I would do with the dashboard and see how fast are they loading. You see, even in the orange ones, some ones are fast, but that initial loading experience was always horrendous, right? So there are tips that we can implement in a way that the loading experience, that's the first impression. Let's make that snappy, because once you get people engaged, you'll actually buy some patience from them too, right? Because if they see this is useful for me, in certain situations, if it takes 5 seconds, that's fine. I will tell you another story now. I was at a customer where we were talking about performance, and I actually looked at that dashboard, many different things. We tried every single thing, but ultimately we got to a point where we couldn't get it below, I think, 4 or 5 seconds. And I was told, well, our execs don't have that patience. And I said, fair enough. But I think we've tried every single thing other than you guys just completely swapping out your database because your database is the one that's slowing us down. But I did say something that was a little bit controversial. I said, well, not too long ago, 5, 10 years ago, all of you and all of your execs were completely fine starting a report, going for a coffee, having a chat, telling somebody, my report's running, so how was your weekend? And go back and find that report, and now you don't have the patience for 5 seconds. I'm not saying 5 seconds is okay. I always want the sub-second performance, right? But I say that the loading experience, the first impression is very important. So also work in a way that you implement these techniques that the landing experience is good, because I tell you, your execs, you will buy that 2, 3 seconds from them because they say how useful it is. They'll say, that's fine, 2-3 seconds, it's fine. I'll manage that time. So in some of those tips, we actually made that in a way that the loading was fast by removing the tabular data on the load. And we just put a little snippet saying, if you want the detailed data, just click on any cell, and it will load. So at this point, you guys have been very patient, just listening to me talk, hopefully picking up some knowledge along the way. I did promise you something, right? So I will get to that. I think before we go there, yes, if you can switch back to the other screen, please. So that was performance recording. We talked about the live demo, the things that we can implement, because in my opinion, those 5 seconds to a half second wasn't a matter of 4 seconds. I want you to remember how long did it take when we loaded the dashboard. That was 2 minutes, because those two 50-second bars, one had to be done before the other. And it did take completely 2 minutes versus 7 seconds for entirely the same functionality. So think about those little things that matter much. So what I tell myself when I'm designing a dashboard is if I see 2-3 second differential in implementing a tip, I say I'm going to revisit this when my dashboard is complete, because those 2-3 seconds can compound themselves to 20 seconds, because they're also being used with another bad technique when the dashboard is complete. So take a minute, take a few minutes, maybe take this visual, print it out, put it on your cubicle. I have one. And I say, did I cover this? Yes, yes, yes. Cannot do it. Does not apply. But I went through the low-hanging fruit. That's fine, ready to publish. I don't want to spend 2 days just implementing all of this. So I'll do the top low-hanging fruit. Dashboard's out in production. People are using it. They're finding it helpful. They say, can you make that 5 seconds into 4 seconds or 3 seconds because we need it? Sure. It will take me a couple of days. Is that okay? Or it'll take me 2 hours. But I don't want to spend that time not knowing the value of that dashboard quite yet, right? So I address the low-hanging fruit. Then I start going down into the middle. Now, if something starts going to my all C-level execs, I'm going to go all the way to the bottom left. I want to make sure that every single thing is that sub-second performance. So hopefully you can use that and implement some of that. Before you get your hands on it, I'm going to be here smiling while I wait for you to take your phones out. Good, bad, any kind of feedback, your knowledge to make this better the next time around, tips and techniques that you have that I can implement. Anybody who's looking at me is going to be called upon. Good time for take water. Please lock the doors. Nobody can leave. I really, really value your time and the input, because the session that I presented yesterday, I took the time to look at the feedback. That's not a repeat session, but I'm sure I will talk about that session somewhere else, so I can use your input to make my session better, the information that I'm relaying you to better and useful, right? So if you believe this was not relevant, please let us know. I don't mind bad scores. Bad scores tell me more than a good score. There's a lot of people who say, that was great. Say, tell me one thing that was not great as well, please, because I want to make sure that this is better next time around. So for those of you who are done, not an excuse for those of you who are half done. A couple of other good sessions that I think are also good on performance. 2 of them were in the past, so you could watch them on live recordings later on. Not live recordings, I mean recordings later on. There's also a great session by a colleague of mine tomorrow by Jason Oakes. He will talk about designing efficient workbooks. So what is designing efficient workbooks? It was a white paper that was put out by Tableau. It has a lot of these tips and tricks. It explains the concept behind, like I tried to, the count distinct and the sort. How do you make calculations easier? It's a great white paper. It's a long, lengthy white paper. So I tried to compile all of that and my knowledge into that single 2x2 scatter plot. But this one will also talk about some of those tips. So hopefully you can learn a lot from that as well. So please go there. Now, for those of you who wanted to get your hands on it, just look up my name, go to Tableau Public. Love cache, there shouldn't be many, I think. My mom did do a good job. She said, I gave you a great name. The rest is all up to you. So go make me proud. No, that's not true. She taught me a lot. So if you look for Tableau Public, Love Cache Babar, you will actually get this dashboard. In addition to that, if we can switch one more time, please. Thank you. This dashboard right here is not just a scatter plot. Some of the thoughts behind each one of these things. Why not tabular data? What do I need to understand? What is the best practice? Sometimes what a pro tip is. For example, look at previewing the time taken for computing layout in performance recording. So when I see something that's long in performance recording that says computing layout, it's basically finally compiling that view. And sometimes it's related. A lot of times it's related to how much data you are putting in a dashboard. So when you find those things, you say, OK, I need to work on tabular data, right? So this will be sort of almost a how to troubleshoot. And I have the same things just for each one of these. So yes, the printout on your cubicle will not have those, but you will have a way to get to it. In addition to that, if you disagree with some of this or want to provide some additional context, because it's on Tableau Public, I will keep trying to update this to add more and more. So at this point, I think we're close to time. I thank you again for your time to this session. If you have a, oh, thank you. Thank you. I wasn't expecting that. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'm going to stay back. We do have 8 minutes before I have to wrap up, but I'm going to start just disconnecting. And have a great TC, my data nerds and data geeks.